Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Fantasy Files podcast, basketball edition. Hashtag COVID week. Everyone has COVID. It's ridiculous. They really got to find a way to deal with this. All the false positives keep guys out of big games, and then the actual, people that have COVID, they're out 10 days. They got to assess this and make a change. Either they shut down the season for a bit while they're figuring out their testing, or they put it into perspective. But they won't, because they make money on Christmas. We'll see a marquee matchup of Jordan Nwora versus Jalen Brunson, maybe. I like Jalen Brunson, though. He's a beast. He's been balling without Luka. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to put on the timer. It's going to be an important show to pay attention to, because we're inching closer to the fantasy playoffs, which is in February. And it's hard because these are wins that you guys will need to pick up these next couple of weeks, capitalize off of guys that have COVID that you're playing. Personally, all my team has COVID, so I'm going to lose again this week. But and I'm not willing to. I'm willing to take the loss and not give up my really good players, because it's one of those things you got to play the long game, right? You could squeeze in, go on a winning streak like the Rockets. You could lose 17 straight and then win 10 straight. You know what I'm saying? So there's still time for you guys that are. Dude, you could be 0-10 at this point and still get in. I mean, there's 7 or 8 weeks to go, and you don't know, especially if you have 6 teams that make it to the playoffs in your league. So this is a very important week for you guys to listen to. So I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, actually. There we go. Okay, the first guy I want to talk about is Josh Christopher. Like Şengün and like KJ Martin, he's been getting a lot of minutes with all of the people out, okay? So just let me read this to you. 12 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points, and 15 fantasy points. So he's been shoo-in winner, if we can, when we consider winners for the week, they're averaging over 13 plus. We knew this guy could score at will, but it hasn't even been the scoring as much. Look at these rebounds too. 2 rebounds, 3 rebounds, 4 rebounds, and the assists, 7 assists, 4 assists, 3 assists. And the points is obviously very consistent, over 15, almost 10, 15 every game when he gets the minutes. Again, I'm not so sure he'll be a winner, because Garrison Matthews has been playing really well for the Rockets. KJ Martin's been playing really well. When Tate comes back, they'll play really well. Jalen Green is coming back tomorrow, so that's going to affect Josh Christopher's minutes a little bit. Nonetheless, I mean, you look at these. This is good. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. So I think one guy coming back, Jalen Green, isn't going to really affect that much. Jalen Green and him are best friends, so I think they're going to let this young thing go. I like Josh Christopher this week as a winner. Barely, but I do. And I like Jalen Green as a winner. I think he's going to come back and dominate. I think he's had time to work on his shot. Being hurt, being out all this time, they kind of took their time with him. I'm in on him. I'm in on Josh Christopher, and I'm in on Şengün and KJ Martin, all 4 of those guys. I mean, since we're on the topic of the Rockets, I mean, look at KJ Martin's last couple of games. This is insane. 20 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points. I mean, this guy's been absolutely fantastic for a second-round pick that many were questioning, is this a favor pick because his dad's Kenyon Martin? No, this guy is legit. This guy is really, really good. So, I mean, I'm in on all those guys. The Rockets are just a good team for fantasy right now, because everyone has COVID except these young guys on the Rockets. And they're flourishing because other teams have to pick guys off the street, and the Rockets have all these young guys that never play, and they're really good. So I'm in on all those guys. I think they're all winners this week, except Garrison Matthews. I think he's a loser. So, wow. Grant, what do you think?
Yeah, it's crazy because Garrison Matthews just got a contract, so I figured you'd put him in there. But yeah, I mean, like we said before, I mean, we've said this all year. The Rockets are going to be like a league pass team, right? A lot of talent, but they're still going to suck. We kind of saw some flashes of that. I mean, they they came back and I mean, they after what was a 1-11 start, and they won 7 in a row. I mean, that kind of shows you what kind of talent they have if they add a couple more players in the future. But the talent on this team alone will get you fantasy points. I mean, like you said, Josh Christopher, he had that stretch this past week where he had double digits in every game. I mean, he looked really good, and you didn't mention it, but he had a couple steals in a few of those games. So His defense isn't terrible either. You'll get a few steals out of it as well, and his assists are pretty decent. So I'm in on Josh Christopher. In terms of Kenyon Martin Jr., look, he's been in double digits too. These guys are scoring in double digits at a pretty high rate. 15, 10, 15, 14, 13, and that's really good. Double doubles too. I mean, Kenyon Martin Jr. had 10 and 11 one game with a steal. Like that'll get you some pretty decent fantasy points, especially by our standards. We're going a little bit lower, but like I said, a double figure game for a week straight is pretty telling of a pretty good player for fantasy. So yeah, like we said, Sengun's awesome. I love Sengun. Everybody knows this on this pod. I love Sengun. But yeah, all these other role players that we thought were role players are kind of stepping into a new role now as pretty solid fantasy players. So yeah, I'm in on all these Rockets guys.
Garrison Matthews, you're going to be in on as well. I'm out on him. So
yeah, I'm in on Garrison Matthews.
He's been good. Don't get me wrong.
He's found a great role on the Rockets. So. Right.
Yeah.
He can get hot really quick. So.
Yes, sir. Another guy I love is Denny Avdia. I know we've been talking about him in the past, but increased minutes recently, 30 minutes, 27 minutes, 25 minutes, 24 minutes, 21 fantasy points, 21 fantasy points, 17 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points, 11 fantasy points. I mean, this guy's been balling. The 2 steals. Look at these last 5 games. 2 steals, 1 steal, 3 steals. So he's getting steals. He's obviously a plus defender.
Wow.
And yeah, he's getting points, 11 points, 14 points, 15 points. The Wizards have really needed this because Bradley's had to step up and do more. I know their last game was postponed due to playing the Nets, I believe. Was it the Nets or the Bulls that game? One of those teams, or Raptors. One of those teams got postponed. All the games are getting postponed. So this is a guy that you can find on the waiver wire that's available in 99% of leagues still, Avdia. And he's great.
Wow.
He's a second-year guy. He's only 22, 21 maybe, 20 even. Like, this guy has a bright future in the league.
Yeah, he's pretty young.
He's one of those guys, like we talk about Caruso, does all the right things, little things. So I'm in on him. As for the rest of the Wizards, look, Daniel Gafford's an obvious winner. Bradley Beal, we're not even talking about him, winner. Kuzma, loser. I don't like Kuzma anymore. I think he's had he was great to start the year. He's been bad recently, and I'm barely in on Montrezl Harrell, and we wouldn't even talk about him. I'm completely out on
it's
Spencer
just because they're
Dinwiddie.
former Lakers. That's why he's saying this.
Spencer Dinwiddie, you want to see his past games? 7 fantasy points. This is in 30 minutes a game. 6 fantasy points, 12 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points, 7 fantasy points. This is a guy that was picked in the 6th round on average. So drop Spencer Dinwiddie if you had him. He's an automatic loser. So. That's my take on the Wizards. Jeez. What do you got about Avdia? Any other guys you want to bring up on the Wizards?
Avdia's a beast.
Any other...
Avdia's a beast. Yeah. You guys should insert him in the lineup. Yeah, I love Avdia. I always have, and they're starting to believe in him more. Look, he averaged 13, 5, and 2 assists, and with 2 steals over his last 3 games. So, that's a small sample size, but I mean, his value is on the rise. I mean, the coach Wes Unseld Jr. has literally told the media that he's going to get more time. So that's always a good thing. Look, I'm in on those other guys too. Kuzma's a winner. I know why you're saying it because he was a former Laker and you don't like any of the former Lakers.
I like him a lot. I think he's had a great year.
Nice
He's
try.
been so bad recently. It's like not even, you can't even, look at his stats.
Whatever.
They're awful. 10 fantasy points, 15. I mean, he was getting 30 a couple times at the beginning of the year. This is relative. Like Montrez was getting 30 fantasy points per game to start the year. He's now getting 15. Still a winner, but like Kuzma, You're right. I take that back. He could be a winner, Kuzma, because he's getting the minutes and he's become a really good defender. So
yeah, I think it's just a matter of a bad stretch for him, but he has that capability to where he can go off for like 25, and like Harrell has the ability to go out for like 25 and 12 or 25 and 14 or something even better than that. So it's tough because these Wizards have gone in a kind of a downfall, right? But the players that they have are still pretty pretty darn good. I mean, there's a reason they got off to that hot start. So, I'm not out on any of these guys just because I know what kind of talent they have and I know what they can do. I think they're just going through a rough stretch right now. So,
Yeah. And with Cade Cunningham out, I want to go to the Pistons because Saban Lee has been balling in increased minutes. I mean, this is a guy who spent most of the year in G League last year. Corey Joseph's been great. Corey Joe, he's back. Fresh off the Drake song years ago. He's still in it.
yeah.
He's still in the game. He's still in the league. Hey, hats off to Joe Johnson, by the way, who may be a fantasy winner. We don't know. I mean, he's like 40 years old, but he just got signed. He's going to play.
Yeah.
Thomas was good until the last game. Thomas was terrible last game. 1 out of 10.
Brutal.
Him and Taylor Horton-Tucker, man. Jeez, that was a brutal game.
Who in our league has Taylor Horton-Tucker?
Me. He had -7 fantasy points. But he averages like 15.
-7,
he's
gentlemen
good.
And ladies.
He's good, but
them.
I still think they got to trade him for Miles Turner. And if you listen to our other podcast we just did about general basketball topics, you would hear that. Go check it out, Baller Sports Style Like Podcast. Find it everywhere. So I'm with it there. But Saban Lee and Corey Joe, winners this week. They're going to get so many minutes with Cade Cunningham out, who's been dominating the minutes. Cade Cunningham averages like 33 minutes a game as a rookie. So these are guys in the backfield with killing. So put these guys in. Even Frank Jackson's been playing well. He could get you some fantasy points. I mean, Pistons players right now, they could have guys you've never even heard of that'll put up fantasy. I mean, I just picked up Facundo Campazzo for the Nuggets. He's even been playing well. I love my man, my Argentinian legend, the 5'8" master of disaster. I mean, people hate on the guy, think he's a meme, but he was like the European MVP the year before Luka. Like, this guy's good, dude. Like, he's pretty good. I know he had like 2 fantasy points today, but he's been averaging like 10, 15.
Whatever.
You can pick him up, but yeah. And on those 2 Pistons players, and what do you think about these Pistons players? You in on these guys? Are you kind of still hesitant since they're still the Pistons?
I don't know. I'm kind of hesitant because they're the Pistons, but we got to realize that Jeremy Grant's going to be out for a while, so all of these guys' production is going to go up. And now that Cade Cunningham is out, it's probably going to go up even more. I mean, Isaiah Stewart's probably going to get a lot more points and rebounds. Like, all these guys' stats are going to be elevated. So in that for now, yes, I think they are winners. In the long run, when everyone's back, definitely not. I think this is just like a short-term poll for you if you need some guys that just don't have COVID. I think that's what we got to go at this point. Like, just get guys that don't have COVID, and you'll get some productivity. So,
I mean, by the time this podcast comes out, maybe they will have COVID.
I know. We don't even know right now. I have to look at my notifications every time we talk about somebody.
Anybody get COVID? Shams? Did he post? Did anyone else get COVID?
Shams.
And another team we got to look at is the Raptors. We can't even talk about anybody on the Raptors because they all have COVID. The only guy doesn't have COVID is like Chris Boucher. He's been playing more and he's been playing great. But I'm not advising that you pick him up because no one knows when they're going to play again. It could be a whole nother Nets situation where the next 3 games are postponed. I'd stay away from everyone on the Raptors because of that, even Boucher, just because you don't know when he's going to play. I love Boucher, but you just don't know when he's going to play. OG, it's a tough break. He's out for a minute too. So this team who we thought would be in the playoffs is really having a tough stretch right now. They probably won't make it after this. It's hard to get through this. COVID's really ruining all these teams. I mean, Cleveland's even playing Taco Fall today. He had 10 rebounds.
Yeah, he started. He started today.
He started. I know. Taco Fall started. I mean, it's great. Good for and if he stays starting, pick up Taco Fall because that guy gets rebounds, and he's going to make every single one of his shots. He's 7'7". So I mean, that's another guy, Taco Fall. You can lock him in this week. Anybody else you want to talk about? I know you like your boy Yurtsevin, the 7-footer who can shoot for Miami. He's been absolutely balling, and on that team Duncan's been balling. I mean, everyone's been hating on Robinson, and Robinson's like, y'all can hate all you want, I'm still getting paid.
He found his stroke again.
He's a shooter.
He did.
He's found his stroke. So that's another guy, Duncan. I know he's inconsistent, 27 fantasy points and 1 fantasy point and 20. But him and Yurtsevin have been balling. I like Yurtsevin, honestly. I mean, PJ Tucker we talked about last week being fantastic just because he was getting the minutes. Dwayne Dedman getting the minutes. PJ Tucker's now out, so Yurtsevin is a sure thing winner this week. And so is Duncan, of course. So I'm in on those 2 guys.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, I am too. I mean, definitely these guys have kind of stepped up in Bam's absence. Well, everyone's having absences right now, but Tyler Hero has, but he's on everybody's team, so don't even think about that. But yeah, Yurtseven has been awesome. Duncan Robinson has finally found his stroke, so the Miami Heat are kind of clicking on all cylinders, which is crazy to say in these terrible times, but they're kind of doing pretty well right now with all their and Gabe Vincent. I'm pretty sure Gabe Vincent is not in any, but I mean he should be on everybody's teams right now. I don't think he's
Yeah,
available in
Gabe
any
Vincent,
leagues.
20 fantasy points the last 2 games? I mean, he's averaged 14 over the past
Yeah.
week because he's had to play the Lowry role, right? And a couple other guys in the
Yep.
backcourt. Because
Yep.
Lowry's out now. So, look, I mean, he's available in
Yeah.
96% of leagues. So, this is another guy that,
Oh
look at these,
wow.
11 fantasy points, 22 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 7 fantasy. I mean, look, any points is better than nothing. I'm not saying this guy's going to be a sure thing
Right,
winner, but he's
exactly.
getting the minutes, so he's set up to be a sure thing winner. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I mean, pick them up. These are
Yep.
just who has COVID, who doesn't. This is the weirdest time for fantasy basketball in the history of fantasy basketball because we knew last time during COVID it was shut down. We didn't finish the fantasy basketball season, so
Yeah.
we didn't have this before. Last season there wasn't an outbreak like this, so. Another guy to stay away from is Doug McDermott. As much as I like him, they're funneling the ball through 3 guys: Murray, White when he's healthy, and Keldon Johnson, and Jacob Pertl. Or Jacob Pertl, and Devin Vassell even gets some of that production. So I would stay away from Doug McDermott, although he's a guy that could have a Duncan Robinson type day where he hits 7 threes and then he's 30 fantasy points. You know what I mean? So it's tough because there are guys like Hardenstein that would be fantastic pickups right now because he was averaging 18 fantasy points, but he got COVID, right? There's a lot of these bubble guys like
Yeah.
it sucks about Derrick
That
Rose, who was a
sucks.
big waiver wire pickup, not COVID, 8 weeks because of his injury. And this is tough. It's tough because most of these guys are hurt. I mean, I don't even trust Alec Burks. The guy played 41 minutes the other day and averaged 10 points. How do you get 10 fantasy points in 41 minutes? 41 minutes, you should at least be having 20 fantasy points. But we almost have the timer. I know you want to bring up
Brutal.
Jordan Nwora and a couple other guys, so just speak on that before we go, Grant.
Yeah, Jordan Nwora has been pretty good recently. I think it's kind of gone under the radar because of the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks are the Bucks. I mean, there's a lot of guys there that you can kind of point to and say, oh, well, this guy's going to get this. But Jordan Nwora, if I go through his past week's fantasy points, 19 fantasy points, 21 fantasy points, 29 fantasy points, and now tonight he has 13 and a half. The game's not over yet. So, I mean, he's been lights out. He's been playing 42 minutes, 27 minutes, playing a lot of minutes, and this is what happens. He's had a double-double in 2 of those 4 games. He's been, like, unreal. I don't know how this guy's going under the radar, but, he's been playing absolutely lights out basketball, and especially for your fantasy team. So I'd pick him up right now. Like, you got to go get this guy.
And that's the timer. So last guy I want to say, David Duke Jr. He's been fantastic. I'm sorry about your name, but
Yeah, bad name.
poor guy.
Oof.
Poor guy. But hey, he's turning that name around. So he's been fantastic. So
Yeah.
I mean, David Duke Jr. 30 fantasy points, 2 of the last 3 games. That's crazy. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah, look at David.
Wow.
I mean, he's available in 98% of
Wow,
leagues.
it's
So
crazy.
I'm not in on Ennis Freedom. He's been playing more. He sucks. DeMarcus Cousins sucks. Herbert Jones sucks. I mean, these are guys to stay away from. Rudy Gay has been playing terrible. Rajon Rondo shouldn't be in the NBA. DeAndre Jordan shouldn't be in the NBA. Pokuševski, keep an eye on him. He's been playing more. He's been inconsistent, but he's been playing more. I like my guy Poku. So, yeah, so that guy's great. Anything to add, Grant? Or are we good here?
Good. No, that's a great way to end it. That's a good batch of guys to end it on.
Keep an eye out on Taco Fall. Thank you guys for listening. This has been the Fantasy Files COVID special in basketball, and this is your co-host Graham Mona, Brandon Deutsch. We'll see you next week.